World War II's Eastern Front, a frozen hell where Moscow's 1941 defense saved the Soviet Union and history itself. But imagine the impossible, the Wehrmacht smashing through, hoisting the swastika over the Kremlin. This isn't just history, it's a chilling alternate reality. And let's find the answer to the question, what if? The immediate fallout from Moscow's fall would be catastrophic. As the Soviet Union's symbolic heart, its capture would unleash unprecedented despair and panic, triggering a profound psychological and political collapse. Stalin's regime would face an immediate legitimacy crisis, potentially sparking internal power struggles, mass defections, or a chaotic governmental flight eastward, severely discrediting its authority. Beyond politics, Moscow was a crucial railway hub, communication nexus, and industrial center. Its loss would cause immediate logistical paralysis, crippling Soviet supply lines, severing vital communication channels, and profoundly disrupting the already strained war economy. This would make any coordinated resistance immensely difficult. Consequently, with the central command severely damaged, organized military resistance would likely fragment into localized pockets. While desperate fighting might continue, the ability to mount large-scale coordinated counteroffensives would be profoundly compromised, forcing remaining Soviet forces into an increasingly isolated and desperate struggle. The fall of Moscow would dramatically reshape the Eastern Front, presenting Germany with both immense opportunities and significant challenges. While a monumental symbolic victory, it wouldn't instantly end the war. German forces would face the daunting task of occupying a vast, hostile Soviet territory, likely sparking a protracted and brutal insurgency. However, success would also free up considerable resources to push further east, especially towards the oil-rich Caucasus, a crucial strategic objective. With Moscow secured, Nazi ideology's ruthless General Plan Ost would accelerate, focusing on systematic colonization, exploitation, ethnic cleansing, and resource extraction across Eastern Europe. This would irrevocably alter the region's demographic and economic fabric. Soviet resistance wouldn't vanish, but would transform into a decentralized, brutal guerrilla war waged from beyond the Urals or within occupied lands. This shift from conventional warfare to a prolonged, low-intensity conflict would still tie down substantial German resources, albeit in a different, more insidious manner, prolonging the nightmare on the Eastern Front. With Moscow fallen and the Soviet Union crippled, the Western Allies would find themselves in a profoundly isolated and precarious position. Britain would face intensified German pressure, U-boat campaigns in the Atlantic would surge, bombing raids could escalate, and the threat of invasion, though still daunting, might feel more acute. Meanwhile, America, while still drawn into the war by Pearl Harbor, would confront a drastically altered strategic landscape. Without the massive Eastern Front bleeding German strength, the US would feel compelled to accelerate its military mobilization and potentially prioritize an earlier, more direct intervention in Europe. Allied strategies would shift dramatically. North Africa and the Mediterranean would likely become the primary European theater, potentially delaying the crucial cross-channel invasion of France. The Western Allies would bear the full, overwhelming burden of fighting a largely German-dominated continent, forcing a complete reevaluation of their war plans in this chilling new reality. The fall of Moscow would unleash a chillingly dominant yet precarious Greater German Reich. Access to vast Eastern European resources, grain, oil, if captured, and slave labor would sustain Germany's war machine, fueling an unprecedented industrial expansion, potentially yielding advanced weaponry and a formidable yet abhorrent economy. The new order would brutally solidify across Europe with puppet regimes, annexations, and occupation. Nazi ideology of racial purity and total control would define this terrifying landscape, leading to unimaginable suffering and systematic cultural destruction. With the Eastern Front neutralized, Germany would likely pursue new global ambitions, a push for Middle East oil, direct naval confrontation with Britain, or an accelerated atomic weapons race, fundamentally reshaping the global balance of power. The capture of Moscow would trigger an unimaginable geopolitical tremor, fundamentally reshaping global dynamics. Crucially, the historical Cold War, defined by the ideological clash between the US and the USSR, would simply never occur. The bipolar world order that dominated the latter half of the 20th century, with its proxy wars and arms race, would be eradicated. In this altered reality, the United States would likely rise as the unchallenged global hegemon. Without a major communist rival, its economic and political influence would be largely unchecked, potentially leading to a different global order, perhaps more aligned with American liberal democratic ideals, yet possibly prone to new forms forms of unilateralism. This radically different power balance would redraw the geopolitical map. Decolonization movements in Asia and Africa would likely take varied, unpredictable paths, and the emergence of other regional powers would occur in a vacuum devoid of the historical superpower rivalry. The 20th and 21st centuries would be almost unrecognizable, shaped by an entirely different set of global forces. Moscow's fall in 1941 radically reshapes World War II, creating a dominant German Reich and a world without the Cold War. In your opinion, what if Germany had captured Moscow in 1941? Share your thoughts in the comments.